Hello, everyone, and welcome to Old Guard versus New Blood, episode 22. And this time we're talking about the SEO crawlers, search crawlers. And I've got another great panel. I've got Izzy, Richard, and Mark here. So, guys, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Why don't we start with you, Izzy? Tell us about yourself. Who are you and where do you come from?
Hi, so yes, my name is Izzy. I am a managing director of a small digital marketing agency called Creators Media. We're based near Birmingham. I've been in the industry for 8 years now. A part of SEO, I'm also a fitness instructor and I love martial arts.
Cool. Excellent. I'm obviously incredibly fit, as you can tell by the double chin and stuff like that. No, I wish. So well done. And thank you very much for coming on the show, Izzy. Richard, tell us about yourself. Where are you? Where do you come from?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name's Richard Lover. I'm the Senior Technical Manager at Screaming Frog. Been in the industry about 6.5 years now, which for me feels like I'm one of the old guard, but very much the new blood, I think. Sort of split across agency and software, so I do a lot of web crawling, basically.
Yeah, we're calling you new blood in this crowd because it's me and Mark you're up against, and Mark I've known for a long, long time. Mark, tell us more about who you are and where do you come from?
Great, thanks, Dixon. So yeah, I'm Mark Thomas. I have been knocking around a while now, so I old guard I'll take as a compliment, I think. But my role currently is the Vice President of Customer Experience, so basically managing all customers for the European region for Botify, which is obviously a web analytics software company focused on SEO, and large part of that product is a crawler. I've worked in 1 or 2 different crawling businesses in the last 10 years, and very passionate about the industry, so looking forward to a good discussion this evening.
It's brilliant, and thanks very much all of you for coming along. And I think we've got a good balance of new blood versus old school, old blood, old guard versus new blood. Obviously, the whole event's sponsored by Majestic, who are themselves a bloody great big crawler, although albeit somewhat specific, I guess, around links. So thanks to Majestic for sponsoring the event. We really, really appreciate it. And just before we get underway, can I just introduce David and make sure that I've not missed anything important? David, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks. No, I just want to share something actually towards the end of the episode in terms of what we're going to be doing next month. But in terms of if you're listening at the moment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, yes, we are a podcast as well if you're watching live. Sign up to watch live next time. Majestic.com/webinars is where to go to make sure you're here for the next live audience. And if you're watching live, try and add comments, interact a bit, ask some questions, and we'll try and involve you as part of the show.
Great, thanks a lot, guys. Okay, so 45 minutes on crawlers starting now. But before we just jump into my questions, Mark, maybe I'll start with you. If people haven't got a time to stay around for 45 minutes, what one tip would you say people should think about when they're doing crawls on websites?
Well, that depends, of course, Dixon. Look, I think there's usually two different types of website that we would deal with. One is a kind of smaller, so fewer than 100,000 pages. And I think if you're dealing with that kind of size of website, then the more frequently you can be crawling, the better. I mean, that goes for any website, but obviously when you get into millions of URLs, it's more difficult to be checking it as frequently as you can. But I think it's extremely clear from all of the different Google representatives that the technical quality of your website and the performance of it is just as important as the content that's going into it as well. So crawlers will help you with both sets, but certainly checking the technical health of your site is extremely important. So crawling as frequently as you can is right up there. I think for a larger website, it's about trying to get a really significant view of the kind of performance and the detail of how the site's structured, so that you can convince stakeholders that you have an authoritative view of exactly how the site's information architecture is designed. Sometimes we try and use samples or smaller amounts, but I think it is really important to show just a very comprehensive view to any developer, if you're hoping to get change implemented, which is the number one challenge, I think, for most of us.
Okay.
So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, no, it's more than one, but we'll we'll get through it. But thank you. That's they're good thoughts. Good place to start the show. Richard, what about you? One takeaway, one thing that they can't miss if in the next few minutes.
Yeah, so I think my one would be kind of understanding the differences between a sort of a web crawler like ScreenFrog or Spotify and a search engine like Google, and how it kind of goes about its crawling process. I get to see quite a lot of exposure to sort of support emails that get sent in, and most of the time the kind of number one question we get asked is sort of, why has our software not found a particular page or particular set pages, but they're clearly indexed in Google? Like, why is that? What's going wrong with your software? And it's always like a very straightforward sort of answer. It's like pages isn't being linked to, or you're maybe linking to it in kind of like a non-standard manner with sort of like JavaScript linking and things like that. Whereas
sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
And like kind of Google is obviously, they're much more sophisticated in the way they kind of go about crawling. They're obviously crawling millions of URLs a day. They're crawling cross domains from one domain to another. So they're going to pick up pages and discover pages from various different sources. So, if you're using a web crawler like ScreenFrog and you're trying to find out why it's not picking up a certain page, and you kind of look at it like that, the question is then, it's not necessarily worse because it's not found those pages. It's that Google's doing it in a kind of different approach. And you can use that to your advantage in that if it's not being properly linked to, those signals aren't being traded to that page. They're not being passed across properly. And then you can go and optimize your site from there.
That's good tip. We'll come back into that, I think, a little bit later, especially things like JavaScript rendering and stuff, because I think that's an interesting aspect. Izzy, you're looking at things from the from the user side as opposed to the technology side a little bit. What tip have you got for people?
So I've got sort of like two in one. First thing, and definitely use the crawlers because they're amazing, but please do remember to analyze the results. Because it sounds like it's obvious, but I've seen so many times that we just rely so much on the technology. And as amazing as the crawlers are, they're just tools that we do have to analyze the results and kind of prioritize the tasks and the hints they give us. And coming out of that, try to go to your development team or the web management team with the solutions, rather than just a list of issues like, here is everything that is wrong, please go do something with it. If you can, give them the solutions, like this is what we should be doing in order to make it better. Trust me, the conversation is a lot easier if you do it this way.
That's a great tip. Approach developers with solutions, not problems, is a fundamental one that I think we should all take on board as SEOs, because we're very good at dumping problems on a web developer's desk without a solution. So I love that one. Well, let me follow on from that, Izzy. Well, last time you crawled a site with whatever, however you did it, really. What was it that you were looking for on that particular occasion? Not generally, but where as long as it's not confidential, and you don't have to give away secrets for your customers at all. But what were you looking at for last time you did a crawl?
So the very, very last time, I've been just looking at the technical performance overall, because one of the clients just been declining in the rankings a little bit, and we've been trying to find if there are any technical issues. But like in more generally, in last sort of time, and we've been looking into Core Web Vitals quite a lot, and so that's like a main, and speed being very, very important.
I guess over recent months, a lot of people have been looking at Web Core Vitals because Google made such a big thing of it. So yeah, Richard. Richard and Mark, I appreciate you guys are more about the tool rather than using the tool. And I know from my Majestic days that sometimes I was guilty of not actually using my own technology as much as I should, just talking about it a lot. But last time you crawled the site, Richard, what were you looking for?
Yes, I think the last time was probably sort of analysing the site structure and the site architecture. So in terms of sort of the internal linking and how the site's built up, is that sort of structurally sound? Are all the important category pages that we were looking at were properly linked to and close to the home page as they could be, or were there like outliers that are linked quite deep in the site when they shouldn't be? And the same, as I was sort of saying earlier, if there are any like unlinked pages Are they all being properly linked? Are they all being properly crawled? Is all that page rank and all those signals being passed evenly throughout the site as you kind of want it to?
Excellent, excellent. Mark, I mean, I don't know if you remember the last time you did a crawl yourself, but how about, you know, if you can remember the last thing you were looking for last time, then great. But also then move on to what are the general things that people are looking for when they, you know, what are the most common things that people are getting out of using a crawler, if I may.
Scandalous, Dixon, that you may suggest I haven't been crawling personally. I know what you mean, though.
You're in such a large organization that, you know, you have to spend all your time on this big sort of technology. That's what I was going for.
I think, yeah, I mean, I guess for all of us, the kind of, I always think that, I didn't coin the phrase, but crawling is about discovery, right? And I don't think I'll ever lose, this sounds very sad to anybody that's not in our industry, but I don't think you'll ever lose that kind of enthusiasm to start a crawl and then to discover things you didn't know, and whether that's, you know, how large the website is, you know, the structures that Richard's talking about, or, you know, whether it's the specific need you're looking for. It's always extremely fascinating. And I can always remember, actually, I had a friend that I really wanted to join our business at one point, and I said to him, "Look, just come and listen to a call I'll make to show a client a first crawl of their website." And you know, we'd worked together previously, and he was just staggered by the customer or the prospective customer's reaction back in those days about, you know, what we were able to start to show them, and you'd be surprised about how little people do know about their site architecture. So it begins with just trying to start to build this kind of rich picture of exactly what's going on. To not veer from your question too much, I think the last time, I mean, the crawls and the discussions we have vary significantly. I mean, there is, as we know, thousands of factors. I've just left a call with a big group where they're all comparing status code distributions and how they're handling different issues at scale across multiple properties. You know, this could be something that we're looking at. But I'd say that probably it's maybe a leaning of Botify, but we are very much looking at the kind of crawl budget distribution. So from the, you know, similar to what Richard's saying, you know, it's a question of, well, how much of my itinerary am I getting crawled at, you know, a really quick kind of rate? You know, is Google seeing as much as possible? And so normally the crawls are pretty broad. You know, you want to go as broad as possible to find every link. So you haven't got that kind of, well, maybe it wasn't linked to, but we never went deep enough. So you're trying to get that really holistic view of the linked kind of architecture as it is. And then comparing that to all of the sources from Google to see, you know, well, where is Google actually going? So normally it's that is the big thing. And that ties into a lot of the speed elements of, it's not really directly on Core Web Vitals, but it's still onto the speed of, you know, people are super interested to see how they can get more done or as much as possible done within the resource that Google's going to give them. So that typically is a crawl budget focus, I'd say, as a general. So
I just like to say that you don't have to worry about people that aren't in the industry watching this show. This is as geeky as we get, and everybody watching the show, apart from, you know, maybe my wife, you know, but she wouldn't watch this show. I can tell you that. No. Okay, so crawl budget. We're going away with crawl budget is something that's important for large sites, especially, and from your point of view. What about Richard? What sort of things do you think are commonly being looked for using crawlers?
In terms of crawl budget, or in kind of general?
No. That was Mark's one. You know, what things are people might be using crawlers like Screaming Frog for to find solutions to.
I think that's the thing with sort of all crawlers is if you have one crawl of your site, there's so much like information you can glean from it. Whether that's you're focused on kind of content and you want to make sure that all your like metadata is properly aligned and keyword focused as it should be. If you're going into kind of the crawl budget avenue, like Mark was talking about, or sort of the internal linking, as I said earlier, that there really is sort of like an endless sort of plethora of use cases. And when we kind of start, sorry.
I was going to say, do you think that people are always just want to get them all, or I mean, I would have thought, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody is ready to fix everything at any one time. It's like, so you might be saying, right, I got to take an arc on fixing the checking that all the descriptions are not duplicated, or I need to check that the links are working, or I need to check that the 404 pages or whatever. But you can't fix everything at the same time. So is it do you think I guess that's a point more than the question, really. I'm a little concerned that some of these reports can be overwhelming, and it's probably a better approach to know what you're looking for before you start your report.
Yeah, I think yes and no. So for us, when we do kind of like technical audits, we try and gather as much information as we can. And obviously, as we're going through the audit, we'll do it stage by stage and tackle different sections at a time, as you're saying. So if you want to look at your meta descriptions or whatever it is. The question is then, when you have all that information, how do you get those recommendations implemented? And that's where the battle really sort of starts working with your developers. If you give them a document of 6,000 things they need to fix, hardly any of those are going to get done. And really, it's a kind of a case of, what do you think is going to have the most impact, and how easy is it to make those changes? And that's where the kind of battle with developers comes from.
So Izzy, do you think that's true, or do you think would you tend to sort of dive into individual things when you're using the tools, or do you take a full audit, and then try and work out which things you need to prioritize? How does it work in practice?
I was dying to say something.
Go on.
Okay, can I answer a few of your questions?
Please do. I'll just shut up.
That you asked before. You asked Richard what people might be using Screaming Frog for. So I just wanted to say that I'm using it to audit Core Web Vitals, because they're doing a brilliant job with this. So little tutorial. And from the last question that you've asked is, I think it. I was dying to say this as well. It depends, right? As with everything in SEO, it depends. I think if we for example, let's take an SEO audit, on a wall. If we do an audit, if I've got a new client, I usually start from an audit to just kind of see overall what's been going on with the website, because let's face it, even if we ask client the questions, and they might not be even familiar enough with the processes that have been previously done or haven't been done to actually brief us enough. So I always like to start with an audit, and then as we said, we end up with this huge pile usually of hints or tasks that are things that are technically wrong. And what do we do? So I think the key, and I think Richard mentioned that the key here is prioritization. So I haven't seen, and I honestly done a lot of website audits, and I haven't met a development team that would just say, yeah, okay, no problem, we're just going to fix all of that, it's going to be all good, and then your crawler is going to come back with nothing else to fix. It just doesn't happen. We don't live in an ideal world. So I would say it's just a matter of prioritizing what's going to take, how much research it's going to take, how much impact it's going to have, how big is the scale of the problem. Is it 2 URLs that are not that important, and maybe we don't have to worry about that much at the start? Or is it whole website is affected and the whole website is very slow, and we honestly have to really tackle that, because the speed being more and more important. So I think the prioritization is a key here, of even if we've got this huge pile of things to fix.
Excellent. Okay, trying to prioritize these things is always a challenge, I'm sure, but that's cool. Right. Okay. So let's go back a little bit to where Richard made the point that when Google crawls a site, it's often gets different information to what Screaming Frog or Botify or Majestic would get when they crawl the site, or the other ones, Sitebulb, and all the other tools that are out there as well. I don't mean to be lean to one over the other, but how does that work then, Richard? I mean, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, but how does that work? Why, surely a crawler is a crawler, and it should get the same results every time. What goes wrong?
Yeah, I mean, so we always try and mimic Google as much as we can, right? Particularly if it comes to things like JavaScript rendering. So, we use the same Chromium they do, use the Evergreen Chromium like they do. So we try and keep in touch with them as much as we can. But even then, we sort of still often find differences in how kind of content is presented between what Googlebot sees and what a web crawler might see. And it can be really difficult to diagnose, particularly on kind of scale. The way I would kind of always go about it is look in Search Console, see the rendered HTML that Google is seeing for a URL there, and then compare it against what you're seeing in a crawler or in a browser or something like that. And then you can kind of make a decision: is this website doing something a bit odd, serving different content to Googlebot when it should be to users.
Cool. Richard, Mark, you got any other sort of tips and thoughts about that? I guess there's, for a start, Google's trying to look at the mobile version of the site rather than the browser version of the site, but I'm sure there's more.
Yeah. I think that ultimately most of the crawlers on the market are going to be within a small margin of difference. Should be very similar. I think in terms of the systematic requests beginning at a particular location and then trying to follow all the links. As Richard said, I mean, there may be slight nuances with the slightly more complex rendering of the pages and then discovering further links. But I mean, I know some of the some great SEOs that you would all know that swear by using 2 or 3 sources of crawl data just to be certain of what they're telling a client. I think that's kind of extreme for a lot of people, but it's not. It's definitely done by some ex-Googlers that work in the industry these days. But yeah, I don't think there's a lot of difference there. I would suggest coming back to. Well, I mean, it starts to become really how you can work with the data and surface the biggest issues, right? So I don't think kind of replicating a crawl, it is the more complex element of it. Of course, at scale, it depends on how you want to, pay for that and run it, whether it's locally or in the cloud. But ultimately, it then becomes about, like, I think as Izzy was kind of suggesting, trying to look at then the scales and cross-referencing a lot of the volumes to make sure you focus on the biggest things. And I think, like Dixon, it goes back to something you were saying a minute ago. There's a real blend between coming to the crawler with a set of questions that the business has or you have, and then actually trying to look for the answers. And I think that's a super important thing that kind of separates the best SEOs that I might encounter and some that are still finding their way, let's say. So some that have got some kind of hypothesis that they want to challenge, and that's where a crawler is super useful to then start to probe those areas. But then the crawler, software companies like us, have a job to do to then surface, as easily as possible some other issues to go and look at. And it often really requires some debate, amongst different SEOs. And I think globally, depending on where people may be watching this from, typically we see in the US, there's really well-resourced teams of numerous people that are going to be debating in-house amongst themselves. In the UK, I tend to notice the teams are much smaller. It may only be 1 or 2 people, perhaps with the support of an agency. So it's kind of about having that debate and that relationship. I do covet some of our American cousins with the ability to have such large resources. And I think probably all of us are very passionate that it'd be great to see in EMEA, that kind of resourcing given to search. But yeah, sorry, I'm waffling on a bit. But generally, you can come with some good, hypothesis to challenge, but also the tools will surface things. But it's never simple to then, get a list of 5 things you've got to go and fix, and that's your sprint for the next period.
Is there anything you want to jump in with there?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like, I've been using quite a few crawlers and jumping in between them, and I think it's also that I've already said that, but I'm a big advocate of tool being a tool that we actually have to analyze the data and don't rely 100% on it, because they've all been designed and developed by different people and kind of different things in mind. So I think they might be looking at things slightly differently. And as Mark, I think, said, there are many people who actually advise and look into different crawlers in order to just make sure and cross-reference. And sometimes you will get these differences between them. Just it might be because of the way they work and they've been designed. So I think it's as if I got it correctly from what Mark was saying. I would definitely say yes, do cross-check and cross-reference, but like if we've got this bigger picture, kind of try to go with it. Don't be like, oh, look, very picky. Oh, maybe this one, Google found this one little link and this crawler didn't find this one little link. So it's like, my work is totally screwed now because this one little link wasn't there. I kind of try to say bigger picture as well. obviously analyze data and be specific, but try to see the bigger picture as well.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in, Dixon, before you can. Following Izzy's point, yeah, I think kind of checking that you've got consistent data is something you would do quite infrequently, but definitely worth doing, just to build the confidence. And it's always about confidence and knowledge, and making sure you've got a clear message to work with the engineering teams that you're going to need to influence. And I think then from that point onwards, it is, once you're happy that you've got good data, making that a source of truth that starts to feed dashboards, feeding information into the business. So that's really where the crawlers are also extremely useful, because it's so factual. There's really not doubts about how data's been kind of scraped, maybe for kind of ranking performance, or these kind of questions that can be a little bit, murkier. I think crawling data is very, very factual, and from any of the tools, you will be able to go and closely inspect to see the issue in real time. Normally, that's going to be very possible. So I think making it that source of truth that then's feeding into the business is also very important.
So I think there's also to add to that, of course, Google doesn't necessarily start at the same point as which the site-specific crawlers start, because Google is crawling the whole web and gets a lot of its signals from deep links from other websites, which is a different starting point many times. I hope you'd agree, and that can have the impact, for example, of having a different weighting on each page. So they got page rank information from the web as opposed to page rank information just from within your website, and that might affect the speed at which they crawl different pages, which might be different to certainly anyway. The point at which Google crawls a particular web page will never be exactly the same point that you crawl the web pages or I crawl the web pages. So there's going to be a difference there. And of course, there's even on a small site, especially on a big site, but even on a small WordPress site out of the box, over time, of course, the links change. As you write a new blog post, that changes the emphasis of because WordPress gives preference to new links. So I think there's something there. Would you agree that the fact that your site is dynamic and changing over time, of course, crawls will not always be the same from day to day?
Yeah,
Is
and I think
fair point, Richard.
So jumping in on that, one of the kind of main advantages as well is with crawlers, they're so configurable, and the amount of settings you can adjust if you want to run a particular test or a particular experiment, or say you want to only kind of crawl a certain area of the site, you can really throttle it down to exactly what you want in that time. Whereas obviously with Google, it's just kind of crawling everything as much as it can. Yeah. And there's always a delay in that. So kind of using those configurations and those settings to your advantage to kind of get that data, and then, like Mark was saying, feed that back into your reporting where you can.
I totally agree. I was thinking of saying something similar, that whereas we've got some sort of, let's say, control over what we allow and not allow Google to crawl. With the crawlers, we've got so many configurations that we can use, that we can ask them to consider this, not consider that, and kind of see how it would look. That's I would say the main difference, that we can control it so much and we can see how things would look if we done things this way or that way.
So I remember, I'm so old. I started with Xenu Link Sleuth, and that kind of you press a button and went, and that was it, really. So it's things have moved on a long way with things like Spotify and Screaming Frog and the others out there. So it's amazing. Okay, right. So we're in Majestic territory. We're sponsored by Majestic. So we've got to have a question on links, guys. So Majestic users can export a list of links where they can see a list of links into a website from other web pages on the internet. So we got a source URL and a target URL. So not internal links, but links in. So Majestic will pretty much check all these links every day or two, few days. So they've got that, but not everybody is a Majestic customer. So if you've got this kind of data from, say, Google Search Console or from another link provider, and you've got that information, you've got a list of links from different websites. Are you able to, and are crawler tools able to check those links on the fly? Mark, is that something that is in Bodify's tool, or is that Bodify more looking about this kind of this cruel budget and looking at things on a website?
Well, it's certainly something we will be looking to add, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's possible now. So, I mean, like with most things, the data is very it's very feasible to kind of pull via API and to use linking data to then create very useful reports. So we do it, and it's kind of custom work that we would try and do at the moment. There is a lot of work in our sort of, we're just trying to, this kind of goes back a little bit, sorry to swing for the majestic for 1 second, but it goes back to the previous point about, crawlers are, we say, oh, we're trying to crawl like Google. Well, like Richard was correctly saying, using the same kind of infrastructure and, browser settings and so on to replicate as closely as we can. But a web crawler, there's a bit of a misunderstanding that, obviously Google is very much isn't going to start at the homepage and systematically line up links and just conveniently crawl through an architecture. And I'm doing this kind of pyramid here through the depths of it. Popular parts of the site where new content is found, Google will understand that and be checking that more frequently, perhaps. And so that becomes a really important part about bringing in third-party data to try and understand, from other sources where, why will Google come there? And at the moment, we do a lot with log analysis, so we can see forensically where Google has made requests, so that you can try and understand. And probably there's a strong correlation then with, the backlink profile to that page as well. It's going to be.
Well, you seem to have frozen a little bit there.
We kind of used to call the log data as quite a proxy for that. Oh, sorry. So the log data can be a bit of a proxy for popular elements of the website we understand Google will go to, but certainly bringing in the backlink data is something we see a lot of clients of ours doing, and something we want to integrate further in the roadmap really in 2022. So. Okay. Yeah, very important.
Richard, is that something that you can do on Screaming Frog?
Yeah, so I guess if you have the list of backlinks already from another source, like Search Console, or say you have Majestic as well, or another kind of backlink tool, and you grab that list, you can always import that just as a standalone list and crawl those individual URLs to check if they're still live, and check their current status code if they're redirecting elsewhere or doing a 200. If you want to just pull in sort of direct
that checks with the page is still live, doesn't check whether the page link on the page is still live.
Yeah, so then you'd need to do a bit of extra work on that sense. So at least in Screaming Frog, you can kind of set up custom searches. So for your domain name particularly, and it'll scan the HTML if that link is still present in that page.
Oh, that's clever. Okay.
And then you can take that out and then sort of say, okay.
Okay, so it sounds like both your tools, a little bit of setting, tweaking, and stuff, and you can get there. But you got to know your tools really. So
exactly
that's fair enough. Is that something you do at all, or is that something that not really a part of your world?
I do, and I was going to say I'm probably a bad person to ask this question because I'm a Majestic customer.
So that's okay.
Mainly use Majestic, but yeah, I mean there are other tools that you can use to check that kind of things. But as I said, I've been using Majestic pretty much since I've started working in the industry, and I'm kind of loyal.
Well, no, it sounds to me that all three tools can do the job then for that particular time. So that's good. But I think checking links is an interesting use of crawlers, really, at least for Majestic customers in general, because clearly, if people are losing links, they want to know at some point. So, thanks. Oh, thanks very much. I didn't mean to challenge all the tools against each other there. So that was my usual. Dixon put his foot in it again. There we go. That's what he does. So let's talk about something a bit more, a bit more out there. And I don't know who's going to take this question, but I'll ask it out there. Let's talk about CDNs and the Cloudflares of this world and stuff. Certainly, it's something that I think some crawlers can have a problem with because the CDN networks have a tendency to try and block non-human traffic, which I think is a mistake. And there's a philosophy around that. We can actually ask about that. But do CDNs cause problems for crawlers, do you think? And do they deliver different kind of content on different crawls? Any particular problems with CDNs that we should know about? I don't know if anybody wants to take that one.
I'll jump in. I guess I'd go the same route as what you said, really. CDNs are fine most of the time, but it's when they kind of block that bot behavior. So if you're trying to audit your website and then you're using Cloudflare or something, they do often kind of prevent you from crawling that, pulling up a forbidden response. And it kind of just comes down to really your setup. Like, you can make allowances within the server settings for either your IP address or a particular user agent, such as the spider, and then you should be able to crawl that fine. In terms of different content, that shouldn't be a problem, but again, the setup might change how that behaves.
Yeah. Okay.
I can talk a lot about my issues with Shopify, for example, and crawling that websites.
Tell us, what are your problems? We've got a lot of Shopify users on the.
Yeah, I've had so many issues with crawling Shopify websites because they've been blocking all my efforts. And pretty much it comes down to the settings in the crawlers. Majority of the crawlers got some specific settings that you can use to. I've specifically been for this too. I've been specifically using Sidewalk and Deep Crawl, and both got specific settings that you can just dig around and kind of use to be able to crawl the sites. But if you don't do that, for example, computer-based crawlers, I would put a crawler on and then it would just go and go and go and go and give me back. Even if it finished at some point, the results weren't really that good as they should be. So just definitely make sure that if there are any if there are known issues with that content delivery network, make sure that you are using the crawler that can handle it, because I did have those issues, and trust me, nothing fun.
Mark, anything you want to add in there? Or?
To be honest, web crawlers for this kind of technical SEO auditing basis typically don't encounter too many or shouldn't, really, because the authentication will be achieved with the client that wants to crawl their website ahead of time. So it's not really a topic for us. I think the interesting thing with the CDN is now tools and Botify, with a bit of a shameless plug here, but moving into this space of actually starting to now work with the CDNs more to give back to bots a better experience of the web page than perhaps the way that the
Cloudflare likes to give. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we're very much sort of looking and working down that route a lot more now. So in fact, they're our friends rather than a kind of problem, I think. Yeah.
I think that's all fine as long as you have somebody in the organization that's able to pop into the CDN account and whitelist the IP address or the user, and that's not always an easy thing to do. It's especially if it's a bank or something like that. Presumably, the CDN level is well and truly locked down, and allowing spurious IP addresses in causes them some more issues.
Or even different story. It doesn't have to be a bank. It can be a client that just had this web agency build a website, and that's all they know, and they just kind of got the website and they want the SEO audit or something. And then if you tell them there's an issue, they just like, we don't know why.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, and there's loads of them. I suppose as you get sort of up, so at a small level client, then they don't know, and at a large level client, they can't get the access in there, right? So
it takes so long to ask this person and that person to actually get to someone who's got the access that it takes ages to actually do.
Yeah, and I think this is an SEO's perennial nightmare, really, is knowing, getting the right person at the right time to say yes to the right thing. So sorry, Richard, you look like you wanted to jump in.
There's also like some things you can do sometimes to try and avoid that. Like, a lot of the time CDNs kick in when you're crawling too quickly or like too fast. So if you can really like throttle that crawl back and slow down the speed at which you're making those requests, then sometimes they're just like happy for you to kind of crack on crawling the site. So you don't always need to whitelist, but it
Yeah,
does,
so
does
those
make it a lot
are the
easier.
specific settings I've been mentioning as well, that they usually just like more imitate the human traffic rather than the bot traffic, and they slower, but at least they can kind of go around the restrictions, let's call it.
Brilliant. So, guys, I mean, 40 minutes, 45 minutes goes really, really quick in these things. So, certainly for me, because I geek out on these things as well. So we're already pretty much close to our time. But I do want to give you guys a chance to sort of talk about each of your individual products and what's coming out, what's new, what can our users reach out and try and use. I use all the products, and I think they're great things. But let's start with you, Izzy, on the creative side. Tell us about what you got, what you can do.
Okay, so I don't have any product for you guys, unfortunately, like the rest of us do. But well, definitely come to me if you need any digital marketing services. Other than that, I can tell you that we at Creators Media recently started a mentorship program that is open to absolutely anyone who is new, who needs some guidance in the industry, who would like to get into industry. Totally free of charge. We just want to give something back. So head into our website and sign up. And
spell the website for everyone.
Spell. Oh my God, Creators Media. Let me just go to it so I don't make a mistake. CRATOSmedia.co.uk.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Any new products, features out?
Yes, we just dropped version 16 of the Spider. There's some really cool features in there, things around sort of like JavaScript auditing, where you can compare the differences between what's in the rendered HTML and the non-rendered, so you can make sure that you're not no indexing in the JavaScript, but not in the other version. There's also some Data Studio integration, so you can pull in sort of crawl reports straight into Google Data Studio, and just lets you really easily monitor any kind of changes to your site if you've done anything wrong or anything's gone up or down, etc. There's loads in there, so have a look at our blog and our Twitter and for the full list.
And Mark, what do you got? What do you got in the Spotify feature list?
Well, it's a very exciting program. So we, probably kind of relatively public. We took some good funding earlier in the summer.
Congratulations with that, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's tremendous for the industry to again see some the tools getting money that can really help us to kick things on. So I think a big topic for probably a lot of tools, but certainly for us, is automation. So we're really, I kind of hinted at it before, working with CDNs, now starting to kind of support web managers. Giving bots a great experience is something we've been, again, quite public about in the last 6 to 12 months now. And we're sort of taking that journey ahead towards more automation of audits to then be able to hopefully start to make some changes for site owners so that they can kind of circumvent that issue and the block of needing to get the developer on board. So once you're in a strong position to start to influence that copy and that experience for the bot, making sure that we can deliver that. So that's really, if someone is listening to this and is interested, I think that would be a really kind of interesting conversation to have with us now. There's lots of buzzwords like machine learning and so on, but the key thing is most things at this scale require machine learning now, so it's kind of goes with it. But we're definitely looking at how do you kind of take the learnings and actually start to kind of just getting the SEO to being more of the decision maker on which things proceed rather than digging through the data or trying to make the recommendation. It's more just about controlling the stop and go of what do we release and getting those changes made. So yeah, I think time goes fast, as today has, as the last 10 years, Dixon, as we were talking about, has gone.
Yeah,
but I think
absolutely.
The next 3 to 5 years it's not going to be overnight that this stuff is everywhere. But I do think we are reaching a point where the SEO will have a really interesting job to just be controlling that that flow of new ideas going out to the site and making those changes much quicker. It's been a terrible couple of years, but a great couple of years for search marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
the value of
honestly,
something-
Mark, if I can be with my sort of majestic hat part of that, if that conversation, and I think I agree with you that giving that experience to the bots is much more important than a lot of the technologies realize. So if I can lend a voice that's anything positive in that debate, then reach out, and I'm here as well. So it's great. Thank you very much, guys. I really do appreciate it. David, what do we got? You promised information at the end of the show. What do we got?
I did indeed, yes. So in December, that is just next month, we're going to be publishing here at Majestic a big series. It's a video series, a podcast series, and a book called SEO in 2022. So if you go to SEOin2022.com, you can sign up for that. You sign up for information about that. We'll tell you exactly when that's going to be published. But it's going to be at some point in December when the book's going to be published and all the content's going to be released. Prior to that being published, we'll do a special preview show next month on the 1st of December. So that's the next edition of Old Guard New Blood on the 1st of December at 5 p.m. GMT, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Special book preview show. Already booked for that are Ayla Icaza Gonzalez, John Alderson, and Michael Bonfils. We'll possibly have one or two more on there. Should be a great episode there previewing the book. So just go to SEOin2022.com to sign up for more information about that.
I've seen the table of contents, guys. It's absolutely storming. So thanks very much, David. Brilliant. So, guys, just one last thing before I send you all on your way, and thank you very much. If they want to get you on Twitter or somewhere else, how do they reach out to you, Izzy?
So my Twitter handle is just EasyCM, as you can see on your monitor. So just you can
podcast people can't see that. So
they can't see that.
Izzy underscore CM.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, as the guys can see on the screens. So yeah, it's just EasyCM. Yeah, Izzy underscore
Excellent.
CM
Richard,
on Twitter.
how do they find you?
Handle on Twitter is @RichLawther. You can find me there. I didn't put it as my name on the.
Can you spell your surname?
Richard can't see anyway.
Spell your
surname is LAWTHER.
You see the iTunes people, they just don't have this advantage, really, And Mark, how do they go find you, track you down?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was such a common name. It's not very obvious, but mine is @SearchMath, so MATH.
Excellent.
Kind of nice
Brilliant.
double meaning there. So yeah, @SearchMath, you can find me on Twitter, but Bodify.com, you can easily reach out to us through that website as well.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you very much for coming on Old Guard New Blood. I really do appreciate it. Please, when it comes out, let people know, let your audience know that it's out, and I'll say goodbye. I'll say thank you after the show's over. But for everybody out there in cyber world, thank you very much for coming along to the show.